All right, go for it.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. Welcome to the Tiyya Foundation Internship Information Session presented by the Social Sciences Academic Resource Center. My name is Sophie and I'm one of your SARC peer consultants. I am also joined today by my fellow colleague and SARC peer consultant, Elizabeth. Our special guest today is Shukri Khatun from the Tiyya Foundation, who will share more information about the nonprofit's programs and volunteer opportunities. If you have any questions, please submit them through the Zoom Q&A function, which is located at the bottom of your screen. We will be addressing all questions at the end. Without further ado, Shukri, you may begin.
Thank you very much, Sophie. And also thank you to Carissa and Elizabeth for putting this all together. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to sharing information about the Tiyya Foundation, giving more information about our programs right now, especially during COVID, what we're doing and what opportunities we're providing for interns at the moment. And but before going into those details, I did want to just kind of give more of a background on the organization, who we are, what we do, and then move forward and kind of go into the internship and then answer questions at the end. So what I'll do now is share my screen. I have a presentation for everyone. So again, my name is Shukri. I'm the Director of Operations at the Tiyya Foundation. I've been there now for 10 years, and my role is to oversee all programs and manage our interns and volunteers at the organization, as well as checking in on our clients, making sure they're doing well. So just kind of a overall management of the organization. So to begin, I wanted to open up with the history of the Tiyya Foundation. So this organization is actually celebrating its 10-year anniversary this year. Unfortunately, we can't really celebrate it with everybody. So that has been a sad part of the pandemic. Is we wanted this to be a festive time, but we're still trying to acknowledge our 10 years virtually. So 10 years ago, this all started with Olia Dima and Maimuna Hussein. And Maimuna is also my wife. So this is also kind of like a family operation. But Olia is the mother and Maimuna is the daughter. And they were refugees from Ethiopia. They went to Somalia in the early 80s, late 70s as refugees due to civil unrest in Ethiopia at the time, and lived on a camp in Somalia for several years before they were allowed to resettle into the United States. Aulia, when she came with her daughter, was, like all other immigrants, just trying to figure out the system, get on her feet with her family, figure out things on their own, and just navigate as best as they could. Then over the years, after being a bit more established, they began to help other refugees. So people that were coming in from East Africa in the mid to late 80s, Olia and her daughter would go and greet them, provide them with very basic items like household goods, food, coffee. But then they also recognized that families were not always receiving the best service. They would come to the United States to an apartment that was pretty much completely vacant, so meaning no furniture at all. So Olia took it upon herself to help these families by giving them, beds to sleep on, couches, closets, furniture items that they needed, so basic necessities. And that went on for several years. And then sometime in the late 90s, early 2000, Maimuna began to see that outside of providing basic necessities, the families, had a lot of children. And so as a child herself, as a child, refugee child that came to the US, she also saw that there wasn't much resources for them. There was not much attention for refugee youth. So she wanted to do something that would focus on them by helping them and giving them more resources so that they could also excel in this country. So Over several years, by 2010, Maimuna established the Tiyya Foundation. And for those of you that aren't familiar, Tiyya, it's an Oromo word from Ethiopia, which means my love. So that word was chosen to kind of show our love for the community and embracing people and kind of creating a family. So that's what Tiyya stands for. We are one of the only nonprofits in Orange County that focuses on refugee youth. At the time of establishment, we were the only one in OC and LA. But over the past 10 years, there have been some more programs in Los Angeles available for youth, but still not as much that is needed. So we really try to do our best to focus on the entire family, but addressing the needs of our youth first. Our mission is to provide community support to families of refugees, low-income immigrants, and displaced Americans. And displaced Americans, it's pretty much people who are internally displaced, and that could be based on environmental disasters, people fleeing from fire or hurricanes, or, hopefully not, but if there's ever social unrest and people have to flee and need to resettle in a different area of the country, we would be also prepared to support those families. So, we treat displacement the same as refugees, which is what they are, displaced people due to civil unrest or based on who they are as people, what they practice. So we try to help everybody. These are some challenges our families face. Of course, the major one is financial. And the way that breaks down is refugees, when they first come to the United States, if you're not aware of the process, once a country accepts a family or an individual to be resettled, the International Office of Migration purchases their ticket, so their flight, to come to that country. So for refugees coming to the United States, the IOM purchase that ticket and then they come, but they're expected to pay that ticket after 3 to 4 months. And they usually have about a year or two to pay off the ticket. So there's a monthly payment that's associated. And for those that can find work as soon as they're resettled, it's not a very difficult ask. But for those that are here in California, and especially in LA and Orange County, finding work is very difficult. And it sometimes takes up to 2 years for a family to find work. And this loan becomes a burden. And it also becomes a point of concern because this is where people's credit reports begin to start. So if they're not paying back their loan, they're also now getting a negative credit in the country. So it's a very difficult process for a lot of our families, especially here living in Southern California. And then the next big one is government assistance is time-based and limited. As you can see, one individual would get about $350 to $400 a month. And that is expected to cover rent, utilities, household goods. And we all know that's virtually impossible, even just for one individual, for that to cover their daily expenses without a job. And families get a bit more in terms of government assistance, but it's still, in comparison, very nominal. Typical cost of rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Orange County is about $1,500. So you can do the math there and see this is very stressful situation for our families. Many of them become homeless. We have families that are in shelters. They live out of their car. If they are lucky enough to have family or friends in the area, they stay with them for a very long time. But to kind of stand on their own feet in an apartment, it does take a long time and it's very difficult. And we often have families that do a second migration. So after they're resettled here, they'll look to other states in the US that are a bit more affordable. But then even that process is very daunting and difficult. Other challenges outside of financial, loss of social status. So basically what that's addressing is families that were once doctors, engineers, or government officials back home. They come here and their degrees don't transfer. So you have someone who might have been a heart surgeon in Syria for maybe 20, 30 years, and then they come here and they have to go through the entire process of studying to be a heart surgeon again, and in English. So for somebody that is well into their career and has to begin over, it's very difficult. The other side of that is in other parts of the world, community is a bit more warmer. There's more interactions with neighbors. People are a little bit more connected. But here in the US, especially in big cities, there's more isolation. So for them, it's hard to come into an area and not know anybody, and also not even have a strong relationship with their neighbors. So that's a huge challenge. Other ones are PTSD. So that's post-traumatic stress disorder. Usually veterans of war go through that, but our refugees as well, since they're fleeing war-torn countries, they've experienced violence in many different ways. And that will get triggered usually a few years after resettlement. Since when they first come, they're in survival mode. They're trying to find their apartment, they're trying to find, school for their kids. They don't have much time to think about what they've gone through. But once they've settled, that's when the memories kick in. That's when they start remembering the war and the violence. And that trauma can also present itself in the family through times abuse, drug abuse, physical and drug abuse do show up because of PTSD. And then the others, language barriers, of course, for some, English is not a language they know, so they have to study and become more familiar with it. Culture shock for those who are coming from smaller villages or areas that are less populated. It can be shocking to come here living in LA or even in Anaheim. It's a big shift. Lack of educational opportunities, especially for the adults who are trying to redo their careers or recertify their degrees. It's not an easy process. And then community support. So this is where the isolation is. We have families that will live in big apartment complexes, but not really know anybody around them. They feel alone, and they tend to get into states of depression because of that. This is who we serve. These numbers are a bit old, from 2017. We're still trying to revamp and update those numbers. And that's actually part of the internship, is to collect that data, but I'll go into more details regarding that. But from 2017, the majority of our families came from the Middle East or North Africa. So that's countries like Syria, Iraq, Egypt. Those are the main population of our refugees living in Orange County. The next big group is South Asian. So those are Afghans, a lot of families from Afghanistan. And then the next group would be from Central America or the Caribbean. So we have families from like El Salvador, Mexico, from Venezuela, from Haiti and Cuba. So those are some of the bigger groups from those regions. And then the smaller groups come from East Africa. There used to be a larger portion of this chart was East African, but that was back in the late 80s, early 90s when families were actually being resettled from that region. But at some point, US policy changed and very few, if any, are resettled from East Africa anymore. So we work with refugees and asylees. For those who don't know the difference, just real quick, asylees are individuals that come to the United States, maybe with a visa or undocumented. And they come because, same as a refugee, they're fleeing their home country due to some form of discrimination or unrest, and seek asylum in the US. So if you were with a visa and it expired, that individual could go and request asylum because there's a fear of returning back home. And then there's also many who are trying to cross to the United States undocumented and then end up in detention centers. And when they're in the center, they try to ask for asylum so that they can be admitted into the United States. Of course, right now, refugees and asylum seekers are not really coming in or being accepted. So with government policies right now, there's much more restrictions for these groups. So we're seeing less and less over the years. Displaced American families, as I mentioned before, human trafficking victims. So these are people victims of, sex trafficking, work trafficking, torture victims. We work with them as well. Low-income immigrants and special immigrant visa holders. So SIVs are refugees, but they get a special status because these are individuals that worked with the United States, probably either in Afghanistan or Iraq. They worked as translators, they worked as engineers on the military bases, and as a result, their association with the US made them a target. So their lives became in danger because of that. And so the US granted them special visas, which means that their process of resettlement was accelerated. So we actually are only seeing SIVs primarily coming into the US right now. Many of them are from Afghanistan. So now moving into our core programs, and this is kind of where now we get into the internship program. So what you as an intern would probably be working on or assisting us with. So our major programs are education and mentoring, and that's for adults primarily, adults or youth entering college. All-Star, and STAR represents soccer, tutoring, arts, and recreation. Those are for youth. That's our youth programming. And Flavors from Afar, that's our refugee catering project, also our social enterprise. So with the first one, the first column, college workshops are still operational. So we're doing everything now virtually. In August, we had a workshop on how to apply for scholarships. Many of these workshops are administered by our community partners, volunteers who are interested in a topic that they'd like to share, and we do it all through Zoom. So these workshops are also open to interns to organize themselves if they have, for example, something they'd like to share with our clients. They are more than welcome to create their own workshop and then host it through Zoom. We used to have a relationship with the USC Film School. It was a summer program for refugees specifically, but that's now on hold. Obviously, college tours are on hold. So a lot of our college prep is just virtual now. We do still have one-to-one mentoring. So for those who would like to help a family directly, answering like questions they might have about how to navigate very basic things in the US, especially now. During the quarantine, we actually had new arrivals coming in as, during March when the quarantine just started. We had families that came and were quarantined to their home. And those first few months when you arrive are the most active. You have to go out, you have to get registered, you have to go do a health exam, and they were locked in their home not knowing what to do. So that's where our mentoring was really helpful because we had at least somebody to listen to them, answer questions. So that's where the mentoring comes in. Resource support and job coaching. So we do also provide that virtually. Emergency relief, this is a big campaign right now that we have where we're trying to provide financial assistance to families to help them out with rent, their utility bills, other financial stresses that they might have. We try to give them some sort of cash assistance, but directly towards covering the expense of something that they need covered. So we have about $25,000 we raised and now reviewing applications currently. So this is also another aspect of the internship program is we're having our interns contact families, ask them questions, interview them, find out more details about their situation so that we can determine how much relief to provide them. Or if it seems they don't need financial assistance, but there's other programs that we could connect them to, then that's what we try to do with those check-ins. So interns have been really helpful. We have over 250 households, so that's nearly 1,000 people that we work with. So we're making calls all the time, and given that the situation keeps changing in the United States, we have to every month pretty much just make sure they're okay. So that's where the role of our interns is very, very, very important. Doing those check-ins. On the youth programming side, All Star, unfortunately, a lot of it is temporarily on hold. So for example, we had a very robust soccer program, but we are not doing that now, and I'm not sure if we will continue forward with it. It's a very difficult activity to perform with social distancing and all the other health factors. And obviously, this is something we can't have really volunteers and interns involved in, so it's pretty much on hold for now. But tutoring is still available. We do that virtually. And tutors can either work with an adult who's going through, community college, or with youth. Especially now, youth are having a hard time going to school virtually. I'm sure even yourselves going to college virtually is not easy. But for someone who's very young and who has parents that don't understand the language or the culture, they're really on their own, and it's very hard. And it's very sad too, because we've seen a lot of our kids who were doing well at school last year, and now they're not. They're not keeping up with homework. They don't understand their lessons. So what we want to do now is try to help them one-to-one, pair them up with a volunteer or an intern. A lot of our interns have been picking up on that side of things too. And we use Zoom, you can use FaceTime, basically any type of technology to help you connect and help them with their homework. A lot of it is just pretty much answering questions because they can't ask questions to their teachers sometimes during these virtual lessons. And it might be just very small questions that you can answer. So that's a big program we need help with. Arts and recreation are also kind of on hold. Definitely recreation, which is our field trips. The arts, in the summer, we did do a couple virtual arts workshops. So like one on music, one on public speaking. We'd like to do more, but it's still very difficult to do virtually, but we're trying our best. And then we have a diaper program. A lot of our new families, that's a big expense. They have a lot of kids, and we try to help them by providing boxes of diapers or baby wipes. And this is also another area where we're asking our interns to help us organize a virtual diaper program where we could find a way to set up a wish list on Amazon and have diapers delivered directly to families that community members can purchase as a donation. So that's also another program that interns are working on. And then Flavors from Afar, this is our refugee catering project. It's still active. This is our workforce training. So what we do is we are hiring refugees who are either professional cooks from back home or just great at cooking, meals from home, from back home, and we employ them so that they can share those meals with the surrounding community while getting paid. And then the training involves we have a kitchen executive who helps them pretty much perfect their meals and their cooking techniques so that they could take that into the culinary world if they wanted to. If they have ambitions to start a restaurant or a catering company or a bakery or anything like that, we try to assist them in that area. We have 2 locations. We work out of a commercial kitchen in Costa Mesa. And then we also have a cafe in Little Ethiopia, Los Angeles. And these are 2 areas where we hire and train refugee chefs. And then during the pandemic, we had a food pantry. So basically, if people were buying food or purchasing items from our cafe, we would also use that money to feed a family that was suffering during the quarantine. Especially the first few months, access to food was very difficult. So we had families that were in need of just like pantry items. So we would do like a meal for meal program where if you bought something from our cafe, we would feed a family. And please, any questions you have, put them on the Q&A, and I'll address them at the end. So Flavors from Afar, a refugee catering project, is also a social enterprise, which means it's not directly a nonprofit. It's also a business. And as a business, we use that money to, one, hire our chefs, but also to um, have money for our nonprofit. So the money goes directly back to Tiyya, and it is our way of funding our own programs. So to stay self-sufficient, this social enterprise is our way of conducting business to help keep our doors open. So that's a little bit of what the social enterprise is. Internships, probably not so much right now for the restaurant. Most activities in LA, so there wouldn't be, I think, much for folks in Orange County, but things keep changing in this world, so who knows? Here's some photos of our families and volunteers. So top left is our back to school celebration. We would host a talent show. So those are kids singing. Bottom left is our soccer team. Those are some of the youth. On the right, that is our storage in Santa Ana with all the diapers. So those are volunteers dropping off boxes of diapers for our families. So our ultimate desired impact is we want to create a community that fosters self-sufficiency. So we want our families to stand on their own feet, but we don't cut services. So families could stay with us as long as they need to. We want them to be active and participate in their society. So we want them to break the isolation pretty much by having a connection with their neighbors, meeting people from our larger community, and then overcome the obstacles in a healthy and productive way. So doing our best to really empower families to stand on their own. How you can help. So we have volunteer opportunities. They're a lot more flexible. So we have people that do help us deliver food. So we have non-contact delivery of food, diapers, household goods that volunteers will do. Obviously hosting diaper drives, making a donation that goes towards our programs. If you want to be an intern, that is where things are a little bit more structured and there's a little more responsibility. So our internship program is flexible in terms of time frame. So you could intern for a quarter, you could intern for a year. There is no set time frame right now. We used to have a 6-month commitment, but because of COVID and because of just changing situations, we're a little bit more flexible on that. But we do require at least 10 hours a week for our interns to work on tasks. Everything is done virtually. So we know that the policies at UCI restrict interns from going out or coming to the office. So we respect that and we allow all our interns to work from home. Much of what I explained earlier, you could do either by hosting Zoom virtual workshops, calling families, and basically you don't have to go anywhere to do the work that's needed. If you are interested in being an intern, you just submit a resume and cover letter to me. On the next slide, you'll see my contact information. If you are accepted, then I will usually follow up with a request to schedule a 15-minute phone interview. And then after that, you will do an orientation. So similar to what I provided now, but with more details regarding work plan and tasks that we would define together. And then you would begin your internship. And then, of course, following us on social media. You're all on your computer, so follow us. Our handle is @TiyyaFDN. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And that's just a great way to stay in the loop, especially now. Everything that we do and everything that we're announcing is done through social media. So that's a good way to know what's changing or what we're creating for our organization. So here you'll see our info. at the bottom, that's my email address. So you can email me directly if you're interested in the internship, your resume and cover letter, and then I will follow up. And that's my number as well. You're more than welcome to give me a call if you have any questions before applying. You can always contact me. So yeah, now I guess we'll go into the Q&A. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Shikri. So now we'll be answering your questions. Please submit them in the Q&A, and we'll be reading your questions out loud. There was already some questions that were pre-submitted. The first question was, what kind of day-to-day task would interns do for the foundation?
So as I said, it would be making phone calls to clients. Sometimes it would be administrative. So if we're hosting a workshop with a partner, it would be to make sure that we have contact with the host, creating the Zoom link. So basically, all the administrative side of a virtual workshop. And then we also have one other component I didn't mention is research. So like I said, our demographics numbers are old, so we need to update that. So kind of collecting data on our families is another area that they would be working on.
Okay, we had another pre-submitted question. Is any previous experience within the field necessary?
No, there's no requirement. Obviously, if you do, that's great. It'll help you, but it's not a requirement. Any other questions? I don't see any others. So I guess everyone's question was answered, or maybe there's nothing more to say.
If all questions have been answered, I just want to say thank you, Shirky, for joining us today, and thank you for partnering with us. The social science academic resources available to support all of these students' academic and professional endeavors. And for students, they can schedule a consultation with us today about internship goals. We can also provide feedback on resumes and cover letters. And if students want more information, they can visit this link in the chat. Oh, wait, there's no chat. Um, oh, wait, there is a deadline. There's a question. The question asks, is there a deadline to send out the resumes and cover letters?
No, no deadline. It's pretty much a rolling application process. So at any point you can apply. But just so folks know, we already have 4 interns from UCI actively working through the end of this year. We probably have only 2 more openings before we're closed for the rest of the year. But then obviously you could apply now for next year. So you wouldn't probably be able to start for 2020, but we would begin looking into 2021.
Okay. Um, so thank you again for visiting us, Shirkari, and telling us all about the Tiyya Foundation. Um, Again, I just dropped the SARC website if students want more help with their internship goals. We look at resumes and cover letters and can provide feedback on that. So everyone is welcome to make an appointment with us. Um, with that, I'm going to close um, this.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you again, Shukri.
All right, thank you all. Really appreciate this and looking forward to working with more interns.
Awesome. Take care.
All right,
Bye.
bye-bye.